Welcome to Mexico Unexplained, where we will explore the magic, the mysteries, and the miracles of Mexico. This series presents information based partly on theory and conjecture. The podcaster's purpose is to suggest some possible explanation, but not necessarily the only ones to the subjects we will examine. Here is your host, Robert Bitto.
Welcome and muy bienvenidos to episode number 431 of Mexico Unexplained, where we examine the magic, the mysteries, and the miracles of Mexico. I'm your host, Robert Bitto. In the arid expanse of Sonora, Mexico, where the Rio Yaqui snakes through fertile valleys, flanked by jagged sierras, a story of unyielding defiance unfolds. The Yaqui people, indigenous guardians of this land for centuries, have long embodied resilience against encroachment. Their history is etched in blood and dust, a chronicle of wars that spanned from the Spanish Conquest to the turbulent years following the Mexican Revolution. Yet one chapter remains shrouded in obscurity even to Mexicans. The Yaqui War of 1925 to 1926, a fierce uprising that pitted a small but determined band of warriors against the modern machinery of the post-revolutionary Mexican state. This conflict, often eclipsed by the grand narratives of the Mexican Revolution itself, was not merely a skirmish but a desperate stand for autonomy, land, and survival. For those who relish the hidden undercurrents of Mexican history, this war reveals the enduring spirit of a people who refuse to fade into the footnotes of progress. The Yaqui War of 1925 to 1926, sometimes extended in historical accounts to 1927 to 1929 due to sporadic fighting, mark the final major clash in the long arc of Yaqui resistance. The 1925 conflict erupted amid the fragile peace of post-revolutionary Mexico, where promises of land reform clashed with the realities of political consolidation. To understand this war, one must first journey back through the Yaqui's storied past, where each rebellion was a thread in a tapestry of resistance woven from sacred soil and ancestral memory. The Yaqui, or Yoeme as they call themselves, are a Uto-Aztecan people whose homeland centers on the 8 traditional pueblos along the Rio Yaqui in southern Sonora. Their name derives from the river Xiac-Vatwe, meaning the brother that cuts through the land, a vital artery that sustains agriculture, fishing, and spiritual life. From time immemorial, the Yaqui have viewed their territory as a sacred trust, divided into the Yoania, the inhabited world, and the Siania, the wilderness realm of spirits and ancestors. This worldview, blending Catholic influences from Jesuit missions with pre-Hispanic traditions, fueled their militancy. Deer dances, Pascola rituals, and the veneration of the Virgin of Guadalupe were not just cultural expressions, but acts of defiance, preserving identity amid assimilation. The Yaquis' first major resistance came in 1740, when they joined the Pima and Mayo in the Great Rebellion against Spanish overreach. Led by figures like Juan Ignacio Uzacamea, they expelled missionaries and seized mines, only to be subdued by superior firepower. Independence from Spain in 1821 brought little relief. The new Mexican Republic, strapped for revenue, imposed taxes on the Yaqui in 1825, igniting the first post-colonial war. Visionary leader Juan Banderas, inspired by divine apparitions, rallied 2,000 warriors from Yaqui, Mayo, Opata, and Pima tribes under the Guadalupe banner. For 7 years they raided haciendas and challenged federal authority, forcing the relocation of Sonora's capital from Arizpe to safer ground. Banderas's execution in 1832 did not end the fight. It galvanized it. The mid-19th century saw cycles of alliance and betrayal. During the Reform War of 1857 to 1861, Yaqui warriors sided with conservatives against liberal encroachments, only to face reprisals. The French intervention of 1862 to 1867 drew them into imperial service, a pragmatic move that bought temporary peace but sowed seeds of distrust. Porfirio Diaz's regime from 1876 to 1911 transformed sporadic revolt into systematic genocide. Diaz's vision of order and progress demanded the Yaqui Valley's transformation into a cotton and sugarcane powerhouse irrigated by foreign capital. Haciendas encroached, railroads bisected sacred lands, and the 1887 Sonora Constitution explicitly excluded errant tribes like the Yaqui from citizenship rights. The charismatic José María Leiva, also known as Cajemé, rose to power, profiled in Mexico Unexplained episode 35. Under his leadership, the Yaqui built a de facto state, fortified villages, a standing army, and even diplomatic overtures to the United States. Cajemé's 1875 uprising unified 4,000 fighters, holding off federal troops until his capture and execution in 1887. His successor, Tetabiatay, pioneered guerrilla tactics in the Sierra del Bacatet, a rugged sanctuary of canyons and peaks. The 1897 Peace of Ortiz promised autonomy and repatriation for deported Yaqui, but Diaz reneged, launching the final solution against the Yaqui people in 1899. The January 1900 Battle of Mazacoba was a slaughter. 400 Yaqui dead and 800 prisoners shipped to Yucatan henequen plantations as slave labor in the brutal tropical heat. An estimated 8,000 to 10,000 Yaqui perished in transit or bondage, their bodies fuel for the Porfirian machine. Deportation was ethnic cleansing by design. Families were torn apart, women and children sold for $75 a head, enduring violation, starvation, and disease in the alien world of Yucatan. Survivors escaped, smuggling across the U.S. border to labor in Arizona cotton fields, where they bought guns to sustain the fight. By 1910, the Yaqui population had plummeted from 30,000 to perhaps 15,000, but their spirit endured. The 1910 revolution offered redemption. Yaqui warriors, battle-hardened and land-starved, flocked to Francisco Madero's banner, then to Venustiano Carranza and Alvaro Obregón. Obregón, a Sonora native and one-armed general, courted them assiduously. "The Yaqui are the best soldiers in Mexico," he proclaimed, enlisting thousands in his constitutionalist army. They fought in key battles like Celaya in 1915, turning the tide against Pancho Villa. In gratitude, Obregón promised restitution, 400,000 hectares of communal lands, water rights, and self-governance. Victory in 1917 brought Article 27 of the Constitution, enshrining agrarian reform, yet implementation faltered. Obregón's presidency from 1920 to 1924 saw Yaqui veterans resettled in communal farms, but corruption and elite backlash eroded gains. Haciendas backed by U.S. investors like the Hearst Corporation reclaimed valleys through legal chicanery. By 1923, Yaqui leaders like Luis Urias Acosta protested encroachments, demanding enforcement of the 1919 Huerta Peace Treaty, which had repatriated survivors and affirmed territorial rights. In 1924, Plutarco Elias Calles Obregón's successor intensified the strain. A fellow Sonoran, Calles prioritized modernization. Dams, irrigation canals, and export agriculture. The Rio Yaqui's waters, once Yaqui lifeblood, were diverted to mestizo settlers and foreign agribusiness. Calles' anti-clerical policies clashed with Yaqui Catholicism, while his suppression of labor unions alienated rural allies. Whispers of rebellion stirred in the pueblos of Vicam and Potam, where elders recounted Porfirian horrors. The spark, the 1923 to 1924 De la Huerta Rebellion. Adolfo de la Huerta, finance minister turned insurgent, challenged Kaiser's nomination of Obregón for a second term. Yaqui fighters, including De la Huertista sympathizers, joined the fray, seeing it as a proxy for land struggles. Although the uprising was crushed, it radicalized the Yaqui. Exiles in Arizona funneled arms across the border, and by late 1925, guerrilla bands under Juan Luis Matius, or Matias, and José María Valenzuela raided haciendas, demanding water and autonomy. These were not random bandits, but heirs to Cajemé's vision, blending indigenous revivalism with revolutionary rhetoric. The war's formal onset traces to September 1926, though precursors simmered from 1925. On September 1, 1926, Yaqui warriors ambushed a passenger train near Vicam Station, detaining President-elect Obregón himself. The rebels, led by Matius, presented a manifesto: expel the military from Yaqui lands, restore water diversions, and honor communal land titles. Obregón, ever the pragmatist, negotiated a brief truce, releasing prisoners and promising dialogue. But Calles, viewing it as banditry tied to De la Huertista plots, ordered escalation. What began as hit-and-run raids escalated into open revolt. Yaqui forces numbering 300 to 500 fighters, with families totaling 2,000, retreated to the Sierra del Bacatete, a 100-mile fortress of thorny scrub, sheer cliffs, and hidden springs. Here, they drew on ancestral knowledge, camouflaged trails, ambush points, and alliances with Seri and Pima holdouts. Women like Maria Felix, a legendary scout, ferried supplies from Arizona, evading U.S. Rangers who patrolled the border under Pancho Villa-era precedents. The Mexican response was swift and ruthless. Kais mobilized 15,000 troops under General Francisco Manzo, augmented by 800 Yaqui auxiliaries, who were coerced Yaquis who were promised land for loyalty. This divide and conquer echoed Porfirian tactics, pitting kin against kin. Modern warfare debuted. On September 15, 1926, the New York Times reported plans for aerial bombardment and gas attacks, a grim foreshadowing of total war. Curtiss biplanes from Guaymas dropped 500-pound bombs on Bacatete camps, while mustard gas irritants choked ravines. The chemical echoes of World War I came to Yaqui lands courtesy of U.S. surplus sales. Eyewitness accounts paint visceral horror. Bill Barker, a railroad engineer at Vicam Station, recalled in a 1996 Journal of Arizona History interview, "The mountains shook with explosions. Yaqui women carried wounded on their backs, screaming defiance as planes strafed them. It was like the old Apache Wars, but with wings of death." By April 1927, the pivotal Battle of Cerro del Gallo unfolded. Manzo's 3,000-man column encircled the hill, a rooster-shaped outcrop sacred to Yaqui lore. Matias's 200 defenders held for 48 hours, rolling boulders and sniping from caves. A nighttime bayonet charge broke the lines. 150 Yaqui fell, including Matias's brother. The commander escaped, but 415 prisoners, 214 women, 175 children, were marched to Hermosillo concentration camps. At the heart of the war were leaders like Juan Luis Matius, a 45-year-old farmer turned general whose lineage traced to Tetabiat. Matias embodied Yaqui hybridity, a Catholic who invoked Huya Anaya, the infinite power, in speeches he coordinated via smuggled telegrams to Arizona kin. "We fight not for blood, but for the river's song," he wrote in a 1926 letter intercepted by Federales. Beside him stood José María Valenzuela, the eagle of the Sierra, whose raids disrupted rail lines to Guaymas, starving federal garrisons. Women were pivotal. In Yaqui society, gender roles blurred in crisis. Matriarchs like Luisa Romero organized herbal medicine networks and spied in Obregon's camps. Deportation survivors from Yucatan, scarred by Henequen whips, fueled resolve. One, Petronila Colupoy, escaped in 1915 and became a lore keeper, reciting epics of Cajemé around Bacatete campfires. Children, too, contributed, herding mules or signaling with mirrors, learning war as inheritance. The Yaquis' tactics were masterful asymmetry. Knowing the Sierra's every arroyo, they struck at dusk, vanishing into fog. U.S. border crossings supplied Mausers and dynamite, bartered for cotton labor. Yet this transnational lifeline drew American ire. 1926 saw U.S. cavalry clashes in Bear Valley, Arizona, capturing 30 raiders. Los Angeles Times headlines vacillated, from bloodthirsty Redskins in 1906 to Mexico's savage war on Yaqui by 1927, reflecting shifting U.S. sympathy. The toll of this little-known war was staggering. Official Mexican tallies claimed 500 Yaqui dead, but Yaqui oral histories and U.S. consular reports estimate 1,200 to 1,500, including civilians. Aerial raids killed indiscriminately. A September 1926 bombing of a Bacatete school tent left 30 children buried in rubble. Gas clouds induced blindness and suffocation, with survivors coughing blood for weeks. Federal troops, many Yaqui conscripts, faced desertion courts, and 200 Yaquis serving under the Mexican flag were executed for treason. Atrocities mirrored Porfirian savagery. Manzo's forces razed pueblos, poisoning wells with arsenic. Captured rebels endured ear bounties, their mutilated bodies displayed in Hermosillo plazas. Deportations resumed, 1,000 to Baja California plantations, where malaria claimed half. International outcry grew. The League of Nations queried Mexico in 1927, but Calles dismissed it as Yankee meddling. For the Yaqui, loss was existential. Families fragmented, sacred sites desecrated. Yet guerrilla warfare inflicted costs. 800 federal dead, millions in pesos squandered on a pacification that fueled Cristero parallels elsewhere. By October 1927, attrition prevailed. Matayos surrendered on October 2nd, per Manzo's report to Calles after a year in the mountains. Scattered holdouts fought until 1929. But the revolt's core broke at Cerro del Gallo. The 1927 Yaqui Peace Accord granted nominal ejidos and military withdrawal, but enforcement lagged. Obregon's assassination in 1928 deepened instability, delaying reforms until Lázaro Cárdenas's 1937 decree, which finally recognized Yaqui autonomy. The war's legacy is bittersweet. It decimated the Yaqui, with its population dipping to 10,000, but their core was preserved. Today, 32,000 Yaqui thrive in Sonora, blending tradition with modernity. Solar-powered pueblos, ecotourism, and legal battles over the Rio Yaqui's waters, siphoned by the Independencia Aqueduct. The 2014 to 2015 water war blockade, halting traffic on Highway 15, echoes 1926 ambushes, earning UN recognition for indigenous rights. The Yaqui War of 1925 is somewhat of a ghost story. Spectral plains over haunted Sierras, whispers of revolutionaries in the wind. It underscores Mexico's paradox. Revolutionary ideals betrayed by statist ambition. The Yaqui teach that land is not a commodity, but a covenant. As Elder Mario Luna declared in 2015, we are the river's voice. Silence us, and the desert reclaims all. Their war was not the end, but a mere verse in an unfinished epic. Thank you once again for listening to another episode of Mexico Unexplained. Remember to like and subscribe to us on YouTube and follow us on X and TikTok. Tell your friends by sharing these shows with others. Please go to our website, MexicoUnexplained.com, for references, illustrations, and for free access to transcripts of past shows. Please visit Amazon.com to purchase the books Mexico Unexplained, Mexican Monsters, and Mexican Miracles to get hard copies of the magic, the mysteries, and the miracles of Mexico. We appreciate your kind attention once again. Until next time, thank you and gracias.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Mexico Unexplained with host Robert Bitto. For show summary, relevant links and commentary, please check out our website at mexicounexplained.com. Like us on Facebook and be a part of the conversation. Adios and hasta la vista.